The old abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town stood ominously, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in vines that seemed to writhe in the moonlight. It had been abandoned for years, ever since the grisly murders that had taken place inside its walls. No one knew exactly what had happened, but the rumors were that the family who lived there had been brutally slaughtered in their sleep by an unknown intruder. Despite the rumors, a group of teenagers had decided to explore the mansion on a dare. They gathered in front of the iron gates that guarded the property, each of them trying to hide their fear as they searched for a way inside. Finally, one of them spotted a gap in the fence, and they squeezed through, stepping onto the overgrown path that led to the mansion's front door. As they approached the house, the air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding settled over them. The door creaked open at their touch, revealing a dark hallway that seemed to stretch on forever. They hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, their flashlights illuminating the dust-covered furniture that lined the walls. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon the staircase that led to the upper floors. They climbed it cautiously, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. As they reached the top, they heard a strange sound, like a whispering wind that seemed to be coming from one of the rooms. They followed the sound, and it led them to a door at the end of the hallway. The door was slightly ajar, and as they pushed it open, they were hit with a wave of stench that made them gag. The room was dark, and the only light came from the moon that shone through the window. But even in the dim light, they could see the source of the smell. Lying on the bed was a body, its flesh bloated and rotting, its eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. The teenagers stumbled back, tripping over each other in their haste to get out of the room. But as they turned to leave, they realized that the door had closed behind them, trapping them inside. Panic set in as they tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. And then they heard it, a scratching sound, like something was trying to claw its way through the wood. The sound grew louder and more frantic, and they realized that they weren't alone in the room. They turned around, their flashlights shaking in their trembling hands, and saw a figure standing in the corner. It was human-shaped, but its skin was pale and stretched tight over its bones, its eyes black and lifeless. It didn't move, but they could feel its gaze on them, and they knew that they were in grave danger. They huddled together, their screams echoing through the mansion as the figure slowly approached them. It didn't make a sound, but they could hear its breath rasping in its chest, and they could smell the stench of decay on its skin. And then it attacked. Its hands were like claws, tearing into flesh and bone with ease. The teenagers fought back, but they were no match for the creature's strength and speed. One by one, they fell to the floor, their bodies torn apart in a frenzy of violence. As the last of them died, the creature stood over their broken bodies, its eyes gleaming with satisfaction. It had been so long since it had tasted human flesh, and it relished in the feeling of their blood on its hands. But its hunger was not yet sated. It moved through the mansion, searching for more victims, its footsteps silent on the dusty floorboards. And it found them, in the form of a group of unsuspecting travelers who had stumbled upon the mansion by accident. The creature attacked them with the same ferocity as it had the teenagers, ripping them apart with ease. It was a blur of claws and teeth, a force of nature that could not be stopped. And as it feasted on their flesh, it felt a sense of power and control that it had not felt in years. But as the night wore on, the creature began to feel a sense of unease. It had grown too used to being alone, to having the mansion to itself. The presence of others, of living beings, disturbed it. And it knew that it could not let anyone leave the mansion alive. So it continued its rampage, hunting down anyone who dared to enter its domain. It became more and more frenzied, its attacks more brutal and savage. And as the sun began to rise, the creature retreated to its lair, its belly full of human flesh. But even as it rested, it could feel a sense of unease creeping in. It had tasted blood again, and it knew that it could not stop now. It had to keep hunting, keep killing, in order to satisfy its insatiable hunger. And so it waited, biding its time until the next group of unsuspecting travelers stumbled upon the mansion. It knew that they would come, eventually. They always did. And when they did, the creature would be waiting. It would be ready to unleash its fury once again, to feast on the blood of the living, and to reign supreme over its domain forever. For in the old abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, there was no one to stop it. No one to save the innocent from its wrath. And no one to put an end to its reign of terror.